Hello, animation. Here we are again with our part 9 of our 10-part installment of the animation process, demoing every little step of the way. If you've managed to survive 7 and 8, congratulations. Everything else is all details. So the next step I want to talk to you about is called offsetting. Now you do this at the end. Don't skip ahead and do this somewhere else because this will create a lot more keyframes along your timeline. So one of the last things you do is you do this thing called offsetting. Now, what offsetting does is it allows you to kind of create a more whip-like movement. It's especially used in forward kinematics. It emulates the body, the way the body moves more. Not every joint moves at the same time. It's kind of like one joint moves and the next joint follows and the next joint follows. That's how we throw. That's how we fall. That's how we do a lot of stuff. So offsetting is meant to kind of emulate that, and it's a quick way to do it. All you're going to do is, instead of with the graph editor, you're going to work with the dope sheet. And this is the last time you're going to work with the dope sheet. We've messed with the graph editor previously, and now we're jumping back to the dope sheet. So let's get started, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this thing here. So the first thing let's do is let's change our layout so that we can see the dope sheet again. So if you're already on the 3-panel layout, great. If not, you can always go to Panels, Layouts, and change it to a 3-panel layout. I really like perspective, camera, and then my thing here. You might also want to save as and go ahead and call it Offset Start. I've already done it, so I'm going to call it Offset Start 2. And now the last couple of things to do is to switch this to a dope sheet. Panel, Panel, Dope Sheet. If I did that too fast, it's under Panel in this window here. Panel, Dope Sheet. And you guys can make this however you want. If you want the dope sheet up top, or if you want to do the separate window, go for it. Remember, when I make the dope sheet up here, it takes away the dope sheet down here. You're only allowed one of these types of graphs open at a time. You can't have 2 dope sheets open. You can't have 2 graph editors open. So I like to have them all in one window. You can do whatever you want. Whatever works for you. All right. So what the dope sheet, what offsetting really wants to do is you want to recognize where offsets are needed. Now it's mostly in arms and tail-like things. So like the back of his hat is a tail-like thing. That's why I use that term. It's used when you do like whip-like motions or extending movements, throws, stuff that incorporates a large part of the body. Mostly with arms and sometimes with the spine and sometimes every once in a while with the hip and the feet. But very rarely, if you're using IK, will you do offsetting. And I just want to remind you again, everything we do here you should experiment with and undo it if it's not working. I may show you an example or two where offsetting doesn't work. It kind of messes up your thing, so you want to undo it. But let's first find a good offset spot. And I've already pointed out one in the previous thing. I said, oh, we're going to save that for offsetting. And that is when he starts falling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that spot, then select the hierarchy, and then in the dope sheet, I'm going to slide each dope or each keyframe off by a frame or two. And you'll see him kind of scale his fall a little bit. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So the part I'm talking about is when he's falling. So right here, he is outstretched, and he's about to fall, or he's about to hit the ground. And then when he hits the ground, every joint here is bending at the same time. And that's not actually what would happen. What would actually happen was his feet and his waist would actually hit first, and then his spine would still be looking like this upright part. And then as his feet hit the ground, it would cause his spine and his neck and his arms to all kind of collapse in. So the fact that it's happening all at once doesn't really look right. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix that. So what you want to do is you want to select this hierarchy here. Now instead of doing a right-click select hierarchy, that will give you the entire arm set. It's better just to kind of shift select each one. So I'm going to start at his waist and shift select his gut here, and then his chest, and then his neck, and then his head. So I only have a nice simple rendition there. And remember to navigate through the dope sheet. If I hold Alt and middle mouse click, that'll let me slide it. If I use the wheel, it'll let me zoom in and out. What I want to deal with is I want to deal with the impact and the fall. So I'm going to be moving these two sets of frames over. So his waist is going to stay upright, just like that. The next one I care about are his, this one here, the gut, right? So I'm going to take both of these and I'm going to slide them over. Now to move your dope sheets, remember you have to press W. So I'm going to slide both of these over. I'm going to slide them over too. All right, and then I'm going to take his chest, 1 and 2. I'm going to slide the chest over 4. And then I'm going to take his neck and slide his neck over 2, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just grab his head here and move his head over 7, just because I don't want that to interfere. Now, I may have done it too much. So, like I said, experiment and use undo. So let's see what happens now. So as he's falling, I'm going to look at this window. Oops. Let me undo that selection. There you go. As he's falling, now his body's upright, and then it rocks in, and it makes his head look like he gets whiplash. And that's actually fine. His head kind of backs down. I'm going to move his head back 1. I'm going to make his head even with his neck, just to give him a little bit more time. Bam. And what I'll probably do is he reaches his head up. I might move his head over here and slide it over to the right a bit, so that his head doesn't. Maybe do the same thing with the neck. Grab these 2 joints there. There we go. So if you look at my timeline down here, you notice how many more red ticks I have, and that's why we do this last. So now as he's falling, now it looks like he really gets impacted by that. And I've kind of delayed his head raising. So then he's up in position, and then he goes to go there. So that's a good, healthy offset. And what happens when you do the offset correctly, you'll have this nice staggered pattern. We can do the same thing for his arms and for his hat as he falls. So I'm going to do his hat again. If you missed what I did, I'm just going to do it again with his hat. Same situation happens with his hat. So I'm just going to grab his hat. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's his hat. And as his hat is falling, so that's going to be on 19, his hat's falling. His hat is upright, right? And then at 22, his hat is down, right? So I'm going to offset his hat as well. Now this is just a very simple detail. So I'm going to grab this hat, and I'm going to just, that base of the hat, I'm going to move it over 2. The middle of the hat, I'm going to move it over 4. And the tip of the hat, I'm going to move it over 1. And notice it's still kind of crooked up, and as he falls, so it's still up when he hits the ground, and then the ground makes it kind of fall and move over. And then it bounces back up for a second. And I'm going to do it. The hat's a great example. So as the hat bounces up right here, it's kind of reverberating up. I can also make that also happen. So I'm just going to take his hat, slide it over 2, this one, slide it over 1. So it doesn't all immediately kind of just pop up, right? So the hat's a great example to show that, and just to kind of show you again, as he's falling, the hat's still curled up right here, right? And then the hat slowly absorbs as he's falling, then it kind of gets affected by it. And it just has this more realistic movement. I'm going to do an entire pass of the hat. But let's take a look at let's do his arms as well in this fall. So this fall is great because it allows me to do it 4 times in the same location. Not every place you're going to have to do it for the spine, the arms, and the hat, or whatever it is. Sometimes you'll just need to do the arms. Sometimes you'll just need to do the hat. Sometimes you'll just need to do the spine. But in this scenario, everything needs everything needs to happen right here on this impact. It's a big impact. So the arms happen too. The arms bend a little too soon too. So what I'm going to do is 1 arm at a time. And remember, the arms start with the clavicle. Don't neglect the clavicle. Hopefully you've been animating it and moving it. Clavicle, shoulder, elbow, wrist. And I'm not going to bother with the entire hand. I could, but that would be a lot of offsetting. So here it is again. The clavicle here has an extra keyframe, it looks like, but I'm just going to ignore it. The clavicle here is going to stay put. And I'm going to take the shoulder, that's this guy. And I'm going to take his friend before him as well. I'm going to slide them over, W. I'm going to rotate them over about 2. And then again, the elbow, I'm going to rotate it over by 4. And then the wrist over by 6. So now, as he's hitting the ground, it looks a little weird, but it looks good in the camera angle, right? He hits the ground here, and then the arm reacts to the fall. And that's why we do the offsets. So, once again, I'm going to go here to the clavicles, clavicle, shoulder, elbow, wrist, and I'm going to do the same thing. Grab these two friends, the shoulder and the shoulder for 2, middle mouse click it over by right. Then I'm going to grab his elbow here, slide that over by 4, and then the wrist, slide that over by 6. So now, the arms are still up when he hits the ground, like he's keeping balance, and then they kind of absorb the impact. And everything's moving nice. So just to kind of see it up here on the camera window. Looks a lot better, and it actually it looks like he's getting a little whiplash, which is the nice side of like it really looks like he's getting snapped, like he's taking some damage. So that's good. The next part is another place to show you would be like these swings and these sword swings. So this back swing is another nice simple example where I can just focus in on the arm. I could probably do it to the spine, and I will do it to the spine, but let's do the arm first. So at this pose, I'm just going to grab clavicle, shoulder, elbow, wrist, and I got to zoom out and find there it is, zoom back in. So at this point, the clavicle here is fully loaded, and then as it goes to whip out, now that might look better if I do it in pairs. So if I grab his loading position or his recoil and his attack, or it might be better if I just do his attack. So let's see what happens when I just pull his attack out, and let's see how that looks. Clavicle remains the same. Shoulder, I'm going to move the shoulder out by 2, elbow out by 4, wrist out by 6. Now sometimes you might notice that's pointed in more. Let's see how it looks. So he's still hacking, and then the wrist kind of does this nice little follow through. And that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to see what it looks like if I do the same thing to the shoulder. Shoulder over by 2, elbow over by 4, wrist over by 6. And what you also notice is the wrist is now really fully recoiling as the shoulder starts moving forward. And that's kind of what happens when you do these types of things in real life. So he's hacking forward, and then he recoils, and then his slice. Now, I moved the wrist too far, because as he's slicing, the wrist is not extending. So this is what I mean by making sure you experiment. He's kind of doing a half swing here. So I'm actually going to cheat and just kind of move this till it looks right. I'm just going to kind of maybe offset it a little bit. Let's see how this. And his wrist needs to come back. It all needs to come back. So that, I could have just undone this. But just to kind of see, yep, that wrist needs to be fully extended the whole time. So it really looks like he's hacking, but the wrist does a nice little flail at the end that keeps moving, even though his arm has moved forward. It looks like he's actually carrying some weight. And that's actually the hardest thing to do in animation, is to make it look like it's holding weight. And I did that by just creating this nice set of even steps right here. So that's offsetting, and I could also do it for the spine. Let's see how the spine looks as well. But there's other places where it wouldn't work, and the spine might be a bad spot. Let's take a look. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to go to the neck. Let's try the head too. Why not? Where it won't work is, I've tried it. There's some places where it won't work. I'm not going to do it in front of you. But this jab forward, you might think it might work, and it didn't look good. It was just a hot mess. So I undid it and tried it several different ways, and it didn't work. So what you're not seeing here is the mess ups, like this forward slash. There's so many keyframes involved in this forward slash that this one didn't work either. It was better just to kind of let that be. But this backslash, it works perfect. So it's a matter of experimenting, it's a matter of trying. Now what I haven't done is his hat, and I am going to go through his final pass doing the hat. But what I'm first going to check is his back spine. So this little back swing right here, I'm going to do the same thing with his spine and see how that works. So the waist I'm going to leave there. Actually, pull the waist over too. Waist I'm going to move over by 2. Oops, undo. I want to do this one. That's where he's fully loaded. I want to do that. Waist I'm going to move over by 2. Gut I'm going to move over by 4. Now it looks like he's getting kind of off. So I might not do it. Let's see. Nope. You see how he's not, it doesn't look like he's really hacking the way he should have been. So I'm just going to undo it. Maybe if I do it by 1 instead of 2. So I just undid it all. Let's do the waist by 1, gut by 2, chest by 3, neck by 4. Let's see how that looks. And I'm still going to say no. So it kind of changes the angle. I could go through and correct it and it might look better, but that's a nice hack. Hack, right? So I'm not going to touch that. So like I said, it's not going to work in every place, but when it does work in a good place, like the arm here, it looks like magic. It's going to really look good on the head. All right. That's it. That's it for this lesson. Go through your entire character and just give it offsets in a few spots, and don't be afraid to hit undo. Don't be afraid to try one and be like, that didn't work. Command Z is your best friend. Saving as is your best friend. And just try it out. You also want to avoid the ragdoll effect, where you do it too much or too extreme. Instead of sliding it over by every 2 frames, you slide it over by every 4 frames, and your character starts to look like a ragdoll. So you don't want that happening as well. Otherwise, have fun, and we're almost there. Look at that.